couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster that breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. You can find me on Instagram, The Beautiful Dead Podcast, or go to lenanazari.com and be part of my famed family, and that's how you find out kind of what's going on with me. So, I am busy getting ready for Orlando, MegaCon. 4 days, new vampire panel, thousands of people. I am nervous, but also so excited to do this. So you need to be following me on Instagram so you can see pictures and snippets and everything I'm up to while I'm down there. This is a big opportunity, and I'm very excited to do this. This weekend, I'm somewhere in Philadelphia hanging out with Tony from Hack the Movies, hanging out at the Vampa Museum, maybe doing a meetup. We'll see. I don't know, maybe. But if you're not following me on Instagram, then you're missing all of that. So it doesn't cost you anything. Just go follow. I currently have the door to the vampire office open because Juliet, I don't know what's gotten in her. She's in, out. So we'll see if she lets me get through the podcast. I will be surprised if she does. I might have to go grab her a TREAT just to keep her busy. This is not going to be a long one. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. So if you are trying to get yourself on the treadmill, this is a good episode to listen to because you won't be on the treadmill for long. I really want this one to be done and to never ever talk about it again. So, if you have never watched this channel or listened to this podcast, spoiler alert, I'm gonna ruin everything. Be prepared. If you decided not to watch the movie and you just want to hear me talk about it, let's do a little quick summary, and then we will dive right in. It's best to just rip it off like a Band-Aid. Kiss of the Damned. Paolo, a screenwriter staying in Connecticut to write a screenplay, meets and falls in love with Juna, only to discover she is a vampire who survives by consuming blood of animals. Juna confesses to Paolo, but he refuses to believe her, so she asks him to chain her to the bed so she can prove it. As one does. Revealed in her true form, Paolo is unafraid and releases her from the chains, and they have sex. As the two reach climax, Paolo receives Juna's kiss of death and is turned into a vampire. The two continue to live in Juna's large summer house, which is actually owned by Zinnia, the leader of the vampire community and a theater actress. It's like a halfway house for vampires in Zinnia's community. Their life as a couple is disturbed by the arrival of Mimi, Juna's out-of-control sister, who has come to live at the house after she killed a man in Amsterdam. Mimi claims she only plans on staying a week and proceeds to cause chaos in their lives. She feeds on human after human, which is forbidden in their community, seduces Paolo, and offers Zinnia a virgin, Annie, who is a fan of Zinnia's theater work. Meanwhile, the housekeeper Irene, whose family has been caretakers of the summer house for generations, who suffers from a hereditary blood condition that makes her blood undesirable to vampires. She overhears Juna telling Zinnia that Mimi has been attacking humans, though Zinnia tries to deny it. Mimi recklessly drives her car towards the house before losing control and crashing. Dawn approaches while Mimi is still trapped in the car. She wakes up and races to the house only to fall short within sight of the already burning sun. She sees Irene and begs her to help, but Irene ignores her desperate pleas and pulls out a cigarette, lighting it in front of Mimi before smoking it. Paolo and Juna are preparing to leave the summer house as Paolo states how they're set to go stay with friends in Italy. As they leave the house, a black trash bag near the entrance tips over. Juna, Paolo, and Irene look back at it, find nothing of interest, and continue on their way. So you hear the summary and you're like, this must be a short movie. No, it's 20 minutes worth of material stretched into an hour and a half. There we go. In, out, in, out. Can you hear the clickety click? I'm so sorry. Let's see if she can figure out what she wants. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and give her a treat now so that we can try and get through this episode. But then you may have to listen to her loudly slobbering on the treat. So I apologize for that too. I was really hoping that she was going to go choose to eat this in a different room. But nope, she's decided to do it in here. So hopefully now she has her treat, we can get through this. But now, of course, she's going to chew it loudly behind me instead of going into any other room in the house. All right, let's talk about, there is one crossover, and that is Milo Ventimiglia is in this, and then he was also Wolverine in the animated Blade series. I think that counts. Speaking of animated series, I really need to do Castlevania. So many people are asking. I think that's going to be coming up here soon. Let me know if you're interested in that one. All right, before Juliet bothers me again, let's break down the universe of Kiss of the Damned. Relationship to humans. So for the most part, they walk amongst humans unknown. Most of the humans don't know about them, but then some of them do know and help, like the housekeeper. Some vampires feed on humans and some don't. I guess Mimi in different cities has been feeding and killing humans, but in this city she's not supposed to. It's a no-no. Relationship to animals. The only thing that's really addressed is that they can feed from animals. We don't really see them interact with animals, so I don't know if they have power over them or if the animals would react differently to the vampires. We do learn it's impossible for animals who have been fed on to come back as vampires. We see, I keep wanting to call him Milo, but that's not his name. Paolo and Juna hunt and feed on deer, kind of like think of Discovery of Witches, that kind of thing, chasing them down, or Twilight or whatever. Very similar. Appearance. I mean, they just look human until they vamp out. And then when they vamp out, they have these bright, inhuman eyes and then fangs. Pretty classic. 2 sharp, retractable fangs. So we do have to give them that. They gave them fangs and they can't be in the sunlight. So those are 2 things. They can be up in the daylight, but they can't be out in the daylight. So they can be awake during the day. Blood. So they do need blood, and we learn that they can live off animal blood if they need to. We also learn that this housekeeper has this rare blood disorder that all of the women before her have also had, and it makes her unappetizing to the vampires. And so her and her mother and her grandmother have all sort of worked these homes around the vampires because they're not tempting. Juna explains to Paolo that the hunger starts as a pressure in your low back and then builds, and if it gets too bad, it's a pain, and then you lose control. At first, he says it feels natural when he first hunts. He's like, it felt natural. I feel like it just knew what to do. We also learned that virgin blood apparently is more tasty because a vampire has brought a virgin, and she's upset, saying, bringing a virgin in here with the windows closed like a sacrifice. So we know that they can smell that she's a virgin. So obviously the blood is different. We see them eat food. We see them drink wine.
Cheers.
And all its flaws. And all its warts. Right?
So obviously they can eat and drink, but they still need that blood. Sleep. They sleep in beds with the curtains drawn. I feel like there's safer options than just drawing curtains. Like I would have some lockdown shades or something, just because it's so easy for someone to walk in and just open the curtains. I'm just saying. Holy items. This is never addressed. Powers. You don't grow old and you can't get sick. Those are big ones. I would definitely appreciate both of those. Immediate healing, heightened senses, and extreme strength. So pretty standard vampire stuff. Rules. Zinnia is kind of in charge of the local vamps. I don't know if it's like an appointed position. She got voted in or whatever, aristocracy. Maybe her maker was in charge, but she's in charge. She has these safe houses for them. She enforces the rules in her area. We aren't totally sure of all the rules, but we know that if Mimi is caught killing humans in this territory, she will be excommunicated and not allowed to come back. But we don't know what all the rest of the rules are. How are they made? So we see, oh boy. So let me start by I want to talk about the first makeout scene. And if there's any way that I can share this with you, I'm going to. But Paolo is clearly like immediately love at first sight with Juna, and she is super into him too, but she wants to resist him. So he comes by and she opens the door and the chain lock is still in place, and they start making out through this like tiny little opening with the chain and everything. It was like the weirdest makeout scene I've ever seen in my whole life. I was like, this is so weird. And while it's happening, she nicks his tongue with her teeth. And that next day, that part of his tongue has turned black. So later, they have sex. She loses control during climax. She bites him and then he turns. So that makes me think that there's some kind of venom in the fangs. But then Mimi feeds on and kills several men. And as far as I know, they're not coming back. She just leaves them in the street. It's not like she's decapitating them. She says to her sister, I would never turn someone that I love. So there must be more to the turning than is showed. But Juna's talking to Zinnia and she's like, she's just leaving bodies to be turned. And I'm like, oh, okay. So do these guys like left in the alleyway rise, or do they burn in the sun? Like, what the heck? Then when Zinnia bites and kills the virgin, Mimi says, I'll behead her in the bathtub. So I do think it's like a one bite is all it takes scenario. And then you have to stop your person from turning. So either burn the body or decapitate them. I'm just telling you my best assumption of what's going on. We know there's no heartbeat because she's like, feel my heart. It is not there.
Feel my heart. Find my heartbeat. It's not there, Paolo.
So, but the breathing thing is never addressed. How do they die? Sunlight, decapitation, fire. Classic, classic, classic. All right, are they good or are they bad? All right, so like so many of the universes we talk about on this podcast, once you become a vampire, it does not automatically make you bad or automatically make you good. You can choose what you're going to do with vampirism. We see they can live off animals, they give to charities, a bunch of snobby vampires come together and have a party and talk about, you know, that kind of stuff. So we also know that on the flip side, you could use vampirism to murder unsuspecting co-eds. So it's really up to you what you're going to do with that gift, like many of the things that we talk about. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. Okay, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this one. I might have done it with Blade, but that was so long ago. One of the tropes I love is the pulsing nightclub used as a hunting ground, where you see the vampire walking through the club. You see that club scene where the vampire's walking through and they make eyes to someone in the crowd and they're like, that's the one, and then that person follows them out. I love that trope. I am here for it. The other thing I love is when the master vampire teaches the fledgling vampire all of the rules. It really, really makes my job so much easier when they just boom, 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 list them out. So usually it's the old vampire teaching the new vampire, or it's the vampire hunter teaching the new vampire hunter. But I love when that happens. It just makes it so much easier for me to kind of understand what's going on. The other thing I love is vampire parties. We get to see that a lot. I absolutely loved it. Used it in my book. Even used the vampire charities in my book. Love the idea of like a bunch of vampires getting together and having parties where they can just be themselves. All right, tropes I hate. So I have told you before, I love the fated mate trope. I hate the opposite, which is the instant love trope. Like, you have existed for centuries under scrutiny, under the radar. You have a nice, easy life. You've got this all going for you. And then you meet one human and immediately throw it all away because you're instantly in love with this person. So unless you prove to me that that's your soulmate or you're fated to be together, I hate that trope, the love at first sight trope. She turns him like 2 days after they meet. He moves in, they're madly in love. Come on. Maybe it's my own jaded opinion, but I'm just like, really? I hate the virgin blood trope. Having sex does not change your blood. It drives me crazy. That virgin trope has been around for a really, really long time because it was to teach women, if you have sex, you are now less valuable. You're less pure. You're so tainted that it taints the very blood in your body. I hate that trope. And I've said this before, I hate the one bite is all it takes trope. That would be so much work for you. So if there's more to this, we never get to see it. But to me, it's presented like there's venom in the fangs. And so you would have to behead your victims so they don't rise. Because he says something about burying the deer, and Mimi's like, you know, animals can't come back. And so obviously it's one bite is all it takes. I'm putting more thought into this movie than probably the writers did. That's all I'm saying. All right, the ratings. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of Kiss of the Damned? So let's talk about the scene. She's like, I will show you, I'm a vampire. And then he chains her to the bed, and then she starts writhing around because she's turned on and it's making her vamp out. And he unchains her and they have sex. And when she climaxes, she loses control. So yes, she is beautiful. Obviously, she loves sex, but sex with humans is clearly very, very, very dangerous. And now once he's a vampire, then they're banging all the time, all the time. Mimi uses her sexuality to lure her victims, which I get it. I would probably do the same thing. And then she feeds during the act. So I don't think they're necessarily extra attractive because they're vampires. I think that she and he and the sister are all just very, very hot people. So I'm gonna give them a 6 out of 5 onks for sexiness and allure, because obviously they're very lusty, they're fluid, but they're not extra alluring to humans by any means. They find these humans that are also hot and horny, so pretty easy pickings, and they lose points because they can't control themselves with the humans. So what's the point of having all that sex if every time you have sex with a human it ends in a death? And I'm gonna go back and talk about this scene with her writhing around on the bed, because I think it was supposed to be a lot more sexy than it was, and we're gonna talk about this, but let's just keep going. How scary or evil are the vampires of Kiss of the Damned? Okay, I want to put my feelings about this movie aside, and I want to look at it objectively. They are fast, they are strong, they have heightened senses, they're excellent hunters, they live forever, they heal instantly. They're also super duper hot, so they can entice very stupid people into alleyways and isolated locations where they are very quickly murdered. But they are bound by the sun. Animal blood will sate their hunger, so they don't have to kill. They have their own laws that most of them are following. So the rogue killer vampire is not so very common in this area, but they, I think, turn humans with a single bite. And so that's very bad, and they could probably spread pretty quickly. So all in all, I'm gonna give these vampires like a respectable 6 out of 10 stakes to the heart. They're not the worst, but they're definitely not the scariest at all. But they're pretty solid vampires. If you take all the sex stuff out, they're pretty solid vampires. They unfortunately are just letting their libidos ruin everything for them. That is the problem. My thoughts. The pacing is so agonizingly slow. So it feels like it was meant to be this artistic, beautiful movie, but honestly, it feels like a Skinamax film with a better budget and a cast from Europe. So Milo is pretty much the only American. Michael Rappaport's in it, not a lot, but he's in it. But the rest of them are all European. So it's like they took this Skinamax idea and then just brought it up a couple notches with more money and beautiful accents and beautiful sets and beautiful costumes. The soundtrack was just horrible, and the theme is played way too many times. Way too many times. And if I could play it on here, I definitely will. But it got halfway through the movie, I was like, if they play this music one more time, the vampirism is extremely confusing, okay? So let's talk about her being chained to the bed. So she's like, I will show you I am a vampire, chain me. And so she's like writhing around and she's arching and I was like, oh my God, is she possessed? Like they're presenting it like when your vampire comes out, it's like a possession. And so I was like, oh, so is this supposed to be kind of like she's possessed? But then it never happens again. For the rest of the film, they flip in and out of vampire very quickly. So I'm like, okay, so this was just meant to be sexy, but it's really not sexy at all. It makes absolutely no sense. And then for his dumbass to unchain her while she's doing that, I was just like, this is the most ridiculous scene I think I've ever seen. If it was low budget, I would give it a little more leeway, but no, so dumb. None of the characters really have any depth at all. I didn't feel anything for them. The chemistry between the two leads just is not strong enough for me to believe that they're instantly in love and that they would put everything on the line for each other. It made no sense that Mimi, who'd been very clever and calculating this whole time, she has literally destroyed everyone around her in a matter of days. Very calculating and clever. All of a sudden, she's driving that close to sunrise. Why? She's been so smart this whole time. She's outsmarted everybody. She knows exactly what she's doing. But she leaves and drives to her sister's house too late? No, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. The whole script just did not feel thought out at all. I think somebody had a little bit of an idea. You know, when Mimi showed up, it felt an awful lot like Only Lovers Left Alive. This felt like a really cheap redo of that movie that just was not well thought out, wasn't let me tell you something. If someone said to me, oh, this was a film student's final project, I would have been like, oh, okay, all right, that makes sense. It was 95 minutes. It felt like 15 hours. It took me 3 times to get all the way through it. I would never have finished this movie if it were not for this podcast. And if I ever get to talk to Milo, I just want to be like, dude, why? Did you need the money? Did you think it was going to be better? Like, was the original script better? Did you have an idea in your head? Did you just want to do a sexy vampire film? Like, I'm not judging. I'm just curious about the why. So we haven't done this in a while. This is our first time doing this in 2025. We're gonna do it. It's my reward whenever I make it through like a horrible film. We're gonna do IMDb review titles. So I'm gonna feature them on the video. I've never done this before, but I'm actually gonna feature the title on the YouTube video so you guys can see the users who wrote it and give them an applause, give them a round of applause, because these IMDb review titles are my favorite thing whenever I have to watch a really bad movie. So here we go. 1, porn for women, which I actually disagree with because I did not think it was sexy at all. 2, so much potential wasted in this one. Okay, all right. I think it's not a clever title. It really just drives it home that like you wasted so much energy and cast time and money on this thing. 3, boring vampires who do almost nothing. Yes, I applaud. Very good. That's like a warning. That's like a warning to you. 4, we don't need no stinking character development. It's so good. And then my favorite IMDb review title of the movie Kiss of the Damned goes to, oh Milo, why don't you just make porn instead? Yes, and there it is. There it is. My review of Kiss of the Damned. I never want to watch this again. I never want to talk about it again. I'd really like to wipe it from my brain, but if I did that, I run the risk that I would accidentally watch it again. So I want to remember just enough to never, ever, ever watch this movie again. All right, guys, let me know down below what you think. If you made it all the way to the end, write in the comments chained. Don't know why he chained her up, why that was supposed to be sexy, or why he unchained her, but go ahead and put chains or chained in the comments. I wish you all wicked hugs and oh wait, next week we are talking about, this is on my watch list on Prime, and it's called There's No Such Thing as Vampires. There's No Such Thing as Vampires is the title. Sorry, I almost forgot. So go watch it, come back next week, let's talk about it. Hopefully it's not as bad as this one. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish.